Erin Evans. I'm the new chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee. I'm joined by Vice Chair Delicia Porterfield. Delicia will be serving as our timekeeper this evening. I'll give some instructions about time when we get to the town hall portion of our program. One of the things that I want to mention, Councilwoman Sandra Sepulveda is here this evening if anybody has a need for translation services. So she'll be able to help us with that. Before we get into hearing from residents this evening about license plate readers, we are going to hear 5 minutes from General Funk and his team, as well as our public defender, Martisa Johnson. Our first speaker tonight is going to be General Funk, and so I will invite him to come forward and be able to get us started tonight.
Good evening and thanks. This issue is important to law enforcement. It's important to community safety. I've brought with me two assistant district attorneys, Jan Norman and Jenny Charles, and they're going to make very brief comments, and then I'll follow them, but stay within the 5 minutes. So, Jan, you going to go first? Okay, Jenny Charles.
My name is Jenny Charles, and I've spent my entire career working in the criminal justice system. First as an assistant public defender under the late Roth Alderman, and also at the Davidson County Sheriff's Office, and now as an assistant district attorney. I see license plate readers as a way to solve more of the gun violence that is happening in our city. I have followed this debate very closely, and I've tried listening to all points of view. I think the best phrase I've heard thus far came from Councilmember Russ Pulley, who said that there are two fundamentally different viewpoints in how we see public safety. While I do not agree that capturing pictures of license plates and storing them for 10 days is a violation of personal privacy, I do want to validate concerns for those who are not fully comfortable with the technology. During COVID, I was working from home, and I got a phone call one day. It was from a coworker, and I could tell that whatever he had to tell me, he was very nervous and uncomfortable to tell it to me. A criminal defense attorney who used to be a Metro Police officer had published my home address, a picture of my home, and my floor plan of my residence in a publicly viewable pleading that was in Howard Gentry's office. She did this in a pleading, and when I found out about it, I was scared to death. I did not know if she had maliciously given this to her client, who was accused of some violent offenses. And I had taken care and caution to... I had taken care to put my residence in my maiden name, but I guess she got my maiden name. I understand what it's like to have fears about personal privacy. I get it. But here's where I disagree. I don't think that the answer to this is by marching down to our property assessor's office and demanding she ban her publicly viewable website with a publicly viewable database that arguably contains much more personal information on it than license plate data. So while I appreciate having a healthy dose of skepticism for government, at some point we have to entrust our government to carry out certain functions, including public health and public safety. I want to now briefly discuss a case that was eventually solved by a license plate. The defendant has entered guilty pleas on this case, and I think it drives home that unfortunately, It's still very easy to go into a public place, shoot multiple people, and remain anonymous. On November 8th of 2020, around 1 a.m. in the morning, a group of people gathered to dance to hip-hop music downtown. It was a great scene, and exactly what you should see downtown. Strangers coming together to have fun in a vibrant, open public place. People were everywhere. And one of the tourists snapped some video that I want to show you the footage to give you just some idea of what the scene was like. Forrest, if we could cue that video. If any of you have been to downtown late at night, there's a group of dancers that get together, and it's pretty amazing to watch if you haven't seen it, and I would highly suggest it. 2 minutes later, an argument arose over a dog. One man got into a disagreement with another man in the crowd, and what resulted was a mass shooting in which 8 people, 8 innocent bystanders, 2 of which are here tonight, Ernest Baldwin and Miss Letitia Morton, were shot. I want to show you a clip of video from the aftermath. This is, I'm sorry? Okay, can I just show the video? Okay.
All right. Thanks for your time. The point from the district attorney's office, as we're walking off, I know we're over our time, is anything that promotes public safety in a way that does not infringe on personal privacy interests is something that the district attorney is in favor of. We think it's important. We think community safety is important. And while we want to zealously protect personal privacy, something that's displayed already on the front of our cars or on the rear of our cars is not something that we're trying to keep private. We think it's important.
Jan Norman will be speaking later, and she has a statement to read from the young woman who was killed on I-440 from her mother. Thank you.
Next, our speaker is Public Defender Martisa Johnson. I know she had a hard stop, so are you able to still speak? Okay, thank you.
Do you know where the clicker? Oh. It's my role as the public defender not only to represent people who can't afford to hire their own attorney, but to also make sure that we are talking about and raising awareness to injustices or potential injustices that have effects on all of us. And while I will be upfront with you that I am opposed altogether to the expansion of license plate readers in this city, I understand based on many of the conversations that I've participated in that that is a possibility. And so it's my role tonight to speak to you about the concerns that I have. The first of them being the extreme privacy risk to all of us. This is not just a criminals versus non-criminals issue. License plate readers are tracking information that affects us all. They don't just photograph car thieves or other small crimes that we might filter into a system. A study that was done by the ACLU in Maryland found that for every 1 million plates that were read in that state, only 47 of them were associated to serious crimes. So the other parts of those trackings were people who were going on their regular journeys. And that means all of us are at risk of that. More importantly, I'm concerned about the pervasive surveillance that license plate reader expansion will have in this city. Those who have access to the database that we're speaking about could abuse that database. And we know that there have been studies from the Associated Press that found that law enforcement and other employees misused databases, and they were suspended, fired, or resigned more than 325 times during the test period. Bigger for me in this city is the potential for discriminatory targeting. LPR systems and other surveillance and other opportunities for enforcement or expansion of law enforcement we know have chilling effects on communities of color. They could be used and deployed in this way to reflect institutional or systemic policing bias against certain groups. Black and brown communities have long been subject to over-policing and over-surveillance. A study done in Oakland found that license plate readers were deployed in a more high-density area in those communities than predominantly white neighborhoods. This is an effect here in Nashville, because in 2020, 50.4% of all arrests in our city were Black, while we only represented approximately 27% of our population. As it relates to our jails, 59.9% of the average daily population in this city was Black, while we only represent 27% of the population. In every single category of criminal cases, the bond that was set in a case for Black residents of Nashville was higher in every single category. That is a system problem. The answer to system problems is not to continue to expand law enforcement, continue to expand surveillance, and continue to create opportunities for disproportionate policing, incarceration, and criminal justice in this city. We also know that ICE disproportionately used LPR data. And I sort of rest on these things twofold. LPRs should not be deployed in this city without strong and robust privacy safeguards for residents, which means that we should limit the types of cases they should be used in. We should limit the data retention and how long that data can be stored, and we should prioritize oversight. And finally, my final point is we should be having as broad a discussion about how much license plate reader expansion will cost this city as we are in having the discussion generally. Because cost has not come up. Cost has not been a discussion because right now we're dealing with legislation. But if legislation to expand license plate readers passes in this city, the cost will come up. And what I have heard from residents in Nashville for the past several years is that they'd like more cost allocated to mental health, to addiction services, to education, to expansion of neighborhoods and community efforts to build trust in policing and the criminal legal system. Any dime that we spend to advance surveillance in this city, we should figure out a way to find an equal dime for things that will help my clients who are impoverished and over-policed every day. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, General Funk and Martisa Johnson, for being here this evening. We'll go ahead and start the town hall. I do have a microphone that is over here on this side of the hall. Anybody who is interested in coming and speaking, please go ahead and start to form a line. If you could do it down here in front, that would be the easiest, because then you can walk up, speak, and then carry. And then carry yourself back to your seat. Councilwoman Delisha Porterfield, who is our timekeeper this evening, has a paddle. When you hit 30 seconds, you're going to be notified. She will wave that frantically. When the timer goes off, please step aside and let the next person move forward to be able to speak. We'll start with every person coming up having 2 minutes to speak. If we gather more people after about an hour, I'll reassess and I may cut time as needed. And also, as I mentioned, Councilwoman Sandra Sepulveda is here for anybody who may need to have their comments translated. And so with that, Councilwoman Porterfield, are you ready? All right, we're ready when you are.
Council members, citizens, residents of Nashville, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening regarding LPRs. My name is Marcel Hernandez. I've been a Nashville resident since the late 90s. Live on the west side of the county with my family. In my profession, I specialize in assisting youth in getting successfully through probation. Many email updates go out, and because of the youth I serve reside in marginalized communities, I'm sensitive to the perspectives that cite disparities in policing when it comes to our great city. I've consulted with many. The two main concerns, profiling and privacy, the top arguments in favor: unbiased crime prevention tool, reliable tool for a department with strained resources. There's an abundance of data demonstrating positive outcomes when it comes to LPRs preventing and solving crimes. Only anecdotal data illustrating profiling privacy, with no clear trend or pattern. The concerns appear to be hypothetical, but sincerely held, so what do? Councilmember Johnson's BL 2021-961 emphatically addresses those concerns. Under the bill, several limitations: time-based access, multiple criteria for investigating, built-in prohibitions against things like surveillance and facial recognition. 961 is the compromise we've been working toward for years. Carefully crafted stipulations. Unlike the alternate bill, which only gives the facade of usefulness, law enforcement we trust to keep us safe can now utilize a proven crime prevention tool. Recent months, juvenile gun violence, gun theft. 961 allows us to educate youth so we can intervene before violent crime takes place. Fewer youth committing violent crimes, fewer incarcerated youth, because we can provide services in the community and a safer community for all. Isn't this what we want? I respectfully ask you to support Johnston's 961 bill, create a safer Nashville for all community members. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And if our next speaker, for everybody else in line, one thing I neglected to mention, please add your your address also for everybody to know.
Good evening. My name is Brian Walhart. I live at 1214 Davidson Road, Nashville, Tennessee. That's West Nashville. I'm also a practicing lawyer here in town. So I wanted to speak as mostly a citizen, but also as an attorney. As a citizen, I can tell you that I would welcome license plate readers into my neighborhood. It's exactly the type of tool that we believe would build confidence in law enforcement and really help the neighborhood be much safer. I hear the concerns that were raised by the public defender, and the concerns need to be heard, they need to be said, and the concerns are valid, but I think in this particular instance, we've got a situation where the use of the license plate readers is properly limited, the time period the data is stored is properly limited, and switching hats now from a resident to a lawyer, I can tell you that all of the concerns that were voiced by the public defender were actually addressed by license plate readers, because when you're talking about over-policing, when you're talking about bias, what you need is neutral information without the ability for bias to creep in. You know, not only will this be a crime fighting tool, but being able to see where people are at certain times by reading their license plates will also help criminal defendants prove their innocence when they're incorrectly charged with a crime. This is something that cuts both ways, and I think that's something that hasn't been heard enough. Finally, I just want to echo the fact that I don't think this is private information. We all drive around with these on the back of our car. Thank you for listening to me, and I've got a couple extra seconds left, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ernest Baldwin. I reside at 3821 Round Rock Drive, Antioch, Tennessee. I didn't prepare anything because what I'm saying is coming straight from the heart. So I'll make it straight to the point. A lot of people disagree with this license plate reader issue. But let me be the one to tell you firsthand that the main people who are disagreeing with this situation have no idea and will probably never understand what it feels like to be shot. Especially when you were hit by several bullets that were meant for somebody else. My entire life has been destroyed because of this situation. I lost my job, my house, most of my personal belongings. I will never be able to practice martial arts again, ever. There is not a day to where I am not in constant pain. Point blank, period. I'm on several medications. I am mentally and emotionally scarred for life. This will never change. It will never get any better. As long as these license plate readers are used for what I have been informed they will be used for, I have no issues with it. Because had it not been for the man who did this, his plate being captured, he would have gotten away with shooting me, my fiance, and 8 other innocent people. So I'm all for it. Point blank, period.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Not sure how to follow that, but my name is John King. I reside at 1708 Shelby Avenue. I also have not prepared anything. I just came here to voice my support for license plate readers. I don't see how these could be a bad thing in our community to try to help us get a grapple on violent crime. Personally, I've lived there for, I don't know, around about 8 years or so. I've had a gentleman murdered in front of my home. He was shot at some tennis courts down at the Shelby Community Center, drove his car and passed away while he was behind the wheel, wrecked into a city bus directly in front of my home. I saw it as I got home from work that day. My wife and I saw it. We now have a family. I can't imagine how a license plate reader would have hurt in that case from a crime-solving standpoint. I also live, I said the Shelby Community Center, I live close to that. I also live close to the Shelby Golf Course, where, as many of you probably know, there was a gentleman who was volunteering there a couple of years ago, and he was shot, murdered, and that case remains unsolved. Once again, I don't know the specifics of that case, but I can't imagine how license plate readers could have hurt in that case. Anything that we can have to help us solve violent crime, help gentlemen like this, I can't see how that's a bad thing. So I am in support of these readers. Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gina Coleman. I live at 160 Haynes Park Drive. And our community organized has been, our neighborhood association has been organized for the last 17 years on the issue of safety. The reason why we got the reason why we organized was because we were having all kinds of crime happen in Haynes Park. Haynes Park has been known, had a bad reputation of being a $6 million street for selling drugs. So we organized and we came together and we got no parking and standing signs at first to deal with that issue. Now we have had to go to another level because of the crime. Last year we had 4 instances of crime where a house was infiltrated because of drug, heroin sales, just dope sales, semi-automatic weapons, and $30,000 and money was retrieved. Then we had, at the end of the year, a murder of a 16-year-old killing a neighbor that was trying to stop him from beating up his girlfriend, and he was killed for intervening in that matter. We then also had the situation where the man killed the MNPS worker was found in one of our cul-de-sacs, and we got the cameras. We have had them for 10 months. If they go away, what would we do? What would that be saying to the community? If we take those cameras, what will we then do or use? The cameras are not enough. We still need our neighborhood watch. We still need every neighbor to be watching and being on the watch roll. The cameras are not effective if the cameras don't work. I mean, if the neighbors is not reporting it, we
Thank you,
still need
ma'am.
our neighbors.
Thank you for coming.
My name is Randy Horek. I live at 220 Mockingbird Road. I've been a Nashville resident for 41 years. I read a long article last week in the Washington Post about license plate readers, and I would urge you all to read it for yourselves. The thrust of the article was about neighborhood groups that wanted to install license plate readers, but some of the information was about how they've been used around the country in police departments. They cited a study, I believe it was the same study that Ms. Johnson cited from Maryland, that said in fully 10% of the cases where the police had used license plate readers, they misused, failed to follow the rules that had been established for that. They violated the rules. The story, that's a persistent, pervasive problem. The story also cited a number of anecdotes where honest mistakes were made because of the failure of the technology itself, resulting in police with drawn guns approaching innocent people in their cars because of a mistaken read on the license plate. It may not surprise you to learn that in every single one of these anecdotes, the people who had guns drawn on them were black. The license plate readers are a nice theory, and I have no doubt that they would help reduce the number of crimes. China has its own surveillance state method of reducing the number of crimes, and if we want to go in that direction, that is the way to go here. Obviously, if you have a surveillance state, you can reduce crime. I guess a lot of it boils down to how much you trust the police to use these tools. For me personally, my trust is very minimal based on experience with them, based on incidents like we saw a couple of years ago with the young man who was shot in the back, and then the police misrepresented the story claiming he pulled a gun on them. To prosecutors, to hammers, everything looks like a nail. Of course, they're for it. My question is, the price of this is too great. We should not do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Edward Kehoe. I live in Donaldson, 37214. I feel like we're all looking at the commonality of all these situations where we wish we had license plate readers. When I hear everyone speaking tonight, all I hear are the commonalities of how guns shouldn't have been in play in these scenarios. And if we had a lack of guns and more firearm safety, that we probably would have been able to increase safety there. I don't mean to call anyone out. That's just an observation I had while standing here. Currently, I am the Eastside Outreach Worker and Housing Navigator for Open Table Nashville, working on getting people housing. I wanted to share a story, I won't name names, but there was someone who recently had a negative interaction with the police. It was about 2 years ago, I want to say. This same police officer kept trying to approach her for just because she was being outside, loitering, being homeless, as police do. These negative interactions kept building up, and now she has a felony for assaulting an officer, where the officer wasn't even injured at all. And this resulted in her maintaining her homelessness to this very day. And that's just something that we can't stand for. I bring this up to say that license plate readers do not actually stop crime from happening. It is simply the witnessing of the crime happening. If we want to reduce crime, we need to figure out how we can get to the core element, the core cause of all of these crimes happening without inflicting violence onto people. I'll cut my time short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jamel Campbell Gooch. I'm from here. My entire family is from here. I grew up in 37208 in a decade when it was more likely for you to go to prison or go to jail. I'm the only person who made it off my block. Everyone has either been thrown away or dispossessed by MMPD, in other words, thrown in jail. And I want to say that the way we are having this conversation is extremely shocking. People are impoverished because they don't have money. People are homeless because they don't have houses, and people are sick because they don't have health care. These license plate readers won't fix any of those things. And if you ask one of these police officers in here or a prosecutor that is honest, they know that those three things drive crime. So I want to ask everyone in here, why is there more energy going into these license plate readers and not controlling rent, not making sure our schools are fully funded, not making sure that we have access to well-paying jobs, not making sure we have access to a guaranteed basic income, and not making sure that the money that is coming to our city from the American Rescue Plan actually trickles down to us. So I just want everybody to sit that, hold that, and struggle that. This is the 6th license plate reader bill that has come across city council in the last year since October. So I want everybody to think about why we have 19 city council members supporting a form of a license plate reader bill that won't help my people get housing. We are being displaced. Rent is too damn high. Mortgages are wild. Our people are not getting paid. We don't have good paying jobs, and we are sent crumbs to fight over. So once again, I want you to ask yourself that if we want these 3 things solved, poverty, houselessness, joblessness, healthcare, name it, if we want these 3, 4, 5 issues solved, why are we here together talking about license plate readers and not how we can get universal housing, universal healthcare, and a guaranteed basic income for our people?
Thank you, sir.
Good points. My name is Charlie Thornberg. I live at 1212 Nickel. I've lived in Nashville for about a little less than 40 years. I'm very much in favor of license plate readers. Basically, from a privacy standpoint, if you've got a cell phone, you're being tracked. If you use Google Maps, if you use whatever, you're being tracked. But the other part of it is, I look at it as basically a race and gender neutral device. And I think one of the main things as far as the livability of this town is the life and safety. And in terms of discriminating against people of color, I don't have the facts, but my perception is low-income neighborhoods have disproportionate victims of crime, both violent and nonviolent. And if we can provide those neighborhoods a better tool to make their environment safe, I mean, I would be outraged if I was concerned about my child reading a book in their bedroom and getting shot by a random bullet. So license plate readers are not going to fix every ill that this city has, but if it can make our environment safer for our families, our citizens, our tourists, I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Carly Lemond, and I live at 1923 Delta Ave, 37208, North Nashville. I've heard a lot of the concerns tonight, specifically about who these are going to affect. But the truth of the matter is, crimes are going to continue, and we need these license plate readers to help with that. On May 26th of 2020, I awoke to see 2 men breaking into my boyfriend's trucks. I didn't pull out a weapon, I didn't threaten them, or display any use of force whatsoever. I stood on my balcony overlooking the street and simply yelled to them to stop and to leave. In return, I was shot by Mark Whitehead. Assuming most of you have never been shot before, besides you, I'm here to tell you that it's extremely painful and it changes your entire life in an instant. I will absolutely never be the same. And for months, I had to rely on my friends and my relatives just with simple tasks that I took for granted. Mr. Whitehead, along with his accomplice, DeCarlo Churchwell, had been driving around for days in a vehicle that had been previously reported stolen, committing various crimes. At the time I was shot, the police were already looking for that car as a witness to another crime they had previously committed, had called in the vehicle's descriptions. As we're all aware, officers can't be in all places at once, and they did not spot this car until May 28th, which was 2 days after I was shot. When officers initiated their blue lights on the car, instead of surrendering, DeCarlo Churchwell drove that stolen vehicle into another officer's car while he was inside. Mark Whitehead was in the passenger seat, and inside the stolen vehicle was a bounty of illegal drugs, firearms, as well as my boyfriend's business cards that I guess they stole after shooting me. DeCarlo Churchwell was on probation out of Sumner County for an automobile burglary, and Mark Whitehead had been arrested 14 times in Davidson County since 2018. Both men had rejected rehabilitation offered to them by the judicial system by committing these crimes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Nicole Williams. I live at 4425 West Lawn Drive. First of all, I want to say that I'm so sorry that happened to you, and no one should ever have to go through that. Unfortunately, LPRs will not be the panacea that people are making them out to be. So we've heard talk about how there's so much evidence and so much data supporting how effective they are, and that the only concerns are anecdotal and hypothetical. That's just not true, and I don't have time to get into all of it, but I did want to say, in Austin, they've had LPRs since at least 2016. Their homicide rate this year is at an all-time high. Mount Juliet, frequently hailed as an example by sponsors of BL 2021-961. Property crime increased 19% from 2019 to 2020. Violent crime increased 28%. In Nashville, from 2019 to 2020, property crime decreased 0.7%, so let's just say it was stagnant, and violent crime only increased 12.7%. Shelby County, their sheriff's office uses LPRs, and their violent crime rate was up 23% from 2019 to 2020. So if LPRs were going to fix this, they would have fixed it in the places where they're used. So even if LPRs were the answer, what I really want to know is, like, why now? What is going on here? And I think that there is some stuff going on that we don't know about. I think the funding issue is a really good question to have answered. And there is an organization that a couple of council members and the DA and the ADA sit on the board of that wants to provide these LPRs for our city. And that nonprofit popped up last year. So it would be great to know, thank you. How are they going to get funded? They're not going to solve the problem.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Beth Jocelyn Roth. I live at 1900 Richard Jones Road. For many years, I was the executive director for a nonprofit that studied gun violence in Tennessee, and I advocated for policies to reduce the number of Tennesseans injured and killed by firearms. Our state has one of the worst gun violence problems in the nation. While I and my organization did advocate for stronger firearm laws, including legislation to address easily exploited loopholes in domestic violence, laws and the state's high rate of unintentional shootings of children related to negligent gun storage, we also looked at the best ways to reduce the number of illegal guns on the street. Anyone who follows the ever-increasing number of shootings in our city soon sees a trend. A staggering number of shootings in Nashville and in Tennessee take place with guns stolen out of cars, and it's not uncommon that the thieves also steal the car as well. It's my understanding that Brentwood, Hendersonville, and Mount Juliet all have license plate cameras, and they have helped recover stolen vehicles, find missing persons, and solve violent crimes. Any step that can be taken to improve public safety by making it easier to identify a stolen car and possibly a violent crime or prevent a violent crime or capture the perpetrator must be considered. Another part of my role was working with families who lost a loved one to gun violence. No matter the circumstance, the loss of a loved one to gun violence is devastating. However, possibly the only thing worse is knowing that the person who took your loved one's life, the life of your friend, your parent, your sibling, or your child is at large. These grieving families deserve justice, and if these cameras can be instrumental in identifying the shooter and capturing them, they will help bring some degree of closure and keep a violent criminal off the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is DJ Hudson. I live in Bordeaux Hills, 3324 Panorama Drive. I know that no words can make up for the pain that you both have suffered, but I'm sorry to hear about this. I've been a community organizer here in Nashville for over 15 years, and I also work as a digital organizer for a national organization called Media Justice. I work at the intersection of race, economic justice, and technology and media. And much has been said about license plate readers that I don't need to repeat tonight. But I do want to make a point about the assumption that technology is neutral and unbiased. There's a recent film that came out, it's called Coded Bias. It features a algorithmic scientist from MIT named Joy Bolwami, where she discovers that facial recognition cameras actually cannot recognize darker skinned faces, faces of femme and Black women and darker skinned people at the same rate that they do white, because the technology was only tested largely on white and light-skinned faces. Technology is created by humans, for humans. It is designed by humans for human use and for human purpose. There's always going to be someone on the other end of a camera. In this case, it is Metro Nashville Police. And while the documentation, the data on the accuracy of license plate reader actually is not abundant, and it is called into question widely, the data that we have on who the police will choose to target and stop and pull over and harm, we do have that data. I'll just leave with some words from folks in Detroit who are doing a campaign against facial recognition cameras. I was on a call with folks earlier today in Illinois who are dealing with this exact same issue with LPRs, with also flock cameras, which is that surveillance is not safety. Black people are grieving, we're hurting, and we're tired, but we cannot turn over our communities and our lives to tools that are actually not neutral and are being sold to us for profit by corporations. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ellen Angelico. I live at 1044 Heritage Drive, Madison, Tennessee, and I would first like to say that DJ's shoes are extremely cool, and I should like to have a pair. I respectfully ask members of council to consider, when they get an ask for more policing from their constituents, whether that literally means more police or whether they're expressing a desire for better service, and to consider that perhaps better service, the service that wealthier communities tend to receive, includes more safety nets for people to fall into rather than something that doesn't stop a crime from occurring. Thank you. Thank you.
Before I start, can I ask, how is the time being kept? You raise the sign and then it's just 2 minutes?
2 minutes, I write the sign, we have 30 seconds.
Okay, awesome. I want to do my own thing too, so cool. All right, so I just see that there's both sides, safety and privacy on this issue, and I'm from actually North Nashville, moved to West Nashville, got displaced out of West Nashville, and I'm back in North Nashville, and I'd rather not disclose address, but again, for my own safety. For the LPR cameras and just for cameras in general, I understand there is just an overall skepticism about how the images and the video is going to be used. I do want to note that there needs to be policy for that. The police department was probably going to have to talk to the community. Metro Council is going to have to talk to the community regarding how the use of these LPRs, if passed, is going to be used. And that will kind of deal with the bias that we're speaking of in these conversations. I don't know who's going to lead those discussions, but I really think people need to understand that the biasness that comes with cameras is going to have to be discussed later on. It's going to be difficult conversations because it's a race issue. We know that African Americans, immigrants are disproportionately affected by police. Unfortunately, I think the police department may be trying to help with that, but again, discussion needs to be had, and that's going to be a bigger discussion, more heated conversations, and more emotions are going to be thrown out. So we need to kind of control that and figure out how we're going to have those discussions. On a personal note, again, I've done Uber driving, Uber Eats, and actually I had someone before this. I was doing Uber Eats. I actually had a full-time job working somewhere. And I was chilling with one of my friends inside of a car, and then somebody just randomly shot at our car. We don't know, I don't know it was kind of sketchy because the kid came up to us asking who was in the car. We said our names, and then all of a sudden we heard shots. I don't know who the car was. All I was doing, I was just traumatized from the whole experience because I was just sitting in the car chilling with my friends. Again, chilling in the car with your friends shouldn't, lead to you having to be shot. But again, who would have known that LPR camera would have helped me figure out who shot at my car, and then my Uber Eats, job wouldn't be at jeopardy as today.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Angie Lawless, and like the lady that just came before me, I think it's interesting because I actually feel a little bit more fearful saying my address is 2216 11th Avenue South, Nashville, Tennessee, than I feel about you going out in the parking lot and getting my license plate number. But I live in 12 South. I've been a business owner in East Nashville for 16 years. I love Nashville. I love the people, and I love this debate tonight because I just think it echoes how thoughtful we were about things. And I appreciate all sides. I am in favor, like I said, I've owned a business for 16 years, and we've had employees who've been battered, cars stolen, property stolen. We have cameras, we're going door to door looking, can we patch this together? It doesn't work. My best guess is that those people could have been caught earlier because it wasn't a one-off case. And, for that reason, I think these could really be helpful. Are they the cure for everything? No. Should we be talking about something else? Maybe. But to the extent that we're talking about, is this yes or no? I think these are a piece of the puzzle. I think they help. I also agree with the lady before me in that, when we're talking about the way they're used, the way we're talking about any system and the way it's used with our police officers, they already have many systems that they use in whatever way they use them. So adding this that gives a license plate only, it comes in the way that it's implemented, to my thought. And we have to be very careful and thoughtful about that. But I would urge the council members who are on the fence to consider voting for this, and hopefully it would help solve some of our issues. So, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Sukanik. I live in Bellevue, and I'm for the LPRs as an additional tool to help solve crime, but also as a deterrent. People know that they're there. A friend of mine was shot and killed 2 years ago. They did not find those who killed him. His wife and 2 children no longer have a dad, and they had to move. So these things are real. If someone thinks that they're, away from this, they can't be touched, yes, you can. And it shouldn't only matter when it does touch you. That's the problem that we have. One of the gentlemen, I don't see him here, I think he stepped out. He made some good points about other things that do need to be addressed. I'd love to see us crack open the books and follow every dime that we paid in taxes. Why are costs going through the roof here? We've had a lot of influx from western and northeastern states here that's driven the cost through the roof, as well as development. Is that right to people who live here? No. This is the problem. And we have to follow the money. If you care about people, follow the money. But we also cannot ignore our police officers. They're here to protect us. Every single community that has defunded the police or walked away from them or set them aside, what's happened? Crime's gone through the roof. People don't police themselves. People are afraid to speak up because it might happen to them. Nobody's perfect, but we have got to use what we have and start trusting some people. Because I know this, there's plenty of people out there that would never step up for anybody in this room, but that gentleman would. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Grace Renshaw. I live at 220 Mockingbird. I'm a 40-year Nashville resident. One of my work colleagues is a criminal procedure scholar, and he gave a presentation about 10 years ago noting that the Fourth Amendment, which supposedly protects us all as Americans from unlawful personal searches and seizures, has effectively been rendered moot by technology. He stated that Fourth Amendment jurisprudence has not kept up with the rapid technological advances that allowed government surveillance of private citizens going about their normal daily activities. I honestly don't know how license plate readers do not constitute an unlawful search, as they literally record the personal activity of everyone driving a vehicle. I oppose the adoption of this technology as a gross overreach and an invasion of privacy, and I think an unnecessary expense. As someone who's under private surveillance from 3 separate cameras, including one that films exclusively on my driveway and carport and films me from my back door into my carport every time I leave the house, I can tell you that it is a really uncomfortable feeling to be surveilled by somebody who might not have your best interest in heart and not really know what they're going to, how they're going to use that surveillance. I would also like to express my deep condolences to those who have been the victim of violent crime. My parents were killed by a drunken driver in 1997. Cameras would not have stopped that from happening. They would not have identified the perpetrator. They would not have saved my parents' lives, but they would constitute an unreasonable, I think, surveillance and invasion into the privacy of everybody in Nashville. I oppose this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vienna Tompkins. I live on North 5th Street in 37207. I work in the criminal justice space. I've worked with criminal justice data for most of my career, focusing on things like pretrial detention, risk assessment algorithms, validating them, determining if there's any racial bias, and now I work in the policing space. So this is an area that I care about and also do a lot of work in. There are a couple of things that I want to address that have been said. Largely, I agree with most of the arguments that have been made against the use of LPRs. They're not preventing crime. They have not been shown to prevent crime in research, and there is a lot of potential for misuse. I want to say that there's no such thing as neutral or unbiased data or technology. Data and technology takes on the bias of the system that it's in, and as we know, it is a very biased system, particularly a racially biased system, and bias on the basis of income and housing status as well. And we know that there are other strategies to prevent crime. Many of those have been mentioned, and those are the things that we really should be talking about. I also want to address what was just said about defunding the police and the crime increase. Police actually haven't really been defunded anywhere, and most crime has gone down, aside from murder. And there are a lot of other reasons why murder could be increasing, not to mention the unprecedented pandemic that we've gone through and the stress that has put our communities under. Yeah, that's really all I have to say. I think that we really need to be thinking about this issue differently and not surveilling people when what they really need is support and resources and things that actually make them feel safe and prevent those crimes from occurring in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Twanachik, 5967 Cane Ridge Road. In December of last year, I was the victim of a burglary. My next door neighbor got a good description of the vehicle. Turned out to be a stolen vehicle that had been taken from a man at work over on Murfreesboro Road. The vehicle had been driven around with the same tag that was on it when it was stolen for that whole week. On the day they burglarized me, they did a couple of others. And before it was over with, he did a total of 13, predominantly taking guns and other things from the homes. He was wanted in Wilson County at the time. It changes your tune a little bit to be a victim and realize that this person had an extensive history of having weapons, and it kind of turned my stomach when I realized that had I come home 15 minutes sooner, I would have potentially engaged with him, and that would have not been a good thing. We were able to figure out later on that he went across Murfreesboro Road and Bell Road numerous times, big, wide public roads. If there'd been a reader and could have picked up that plate earlier, then there would have been fewer victims, and it was a license plate we were looking for. So I support this. I think that it could reduce the number of victims. As this young lady and I know, we don't want anyone being shot. It's not something you want to go through. So anytime we can reduce the chances of someone having to go through that, that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Warner, 1028 18th Avenue South. There is no privacy anymore in this country. Unless you do not have a smartphone, do not have a computer, do not use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and all that other stuff. Do not use Amazon. All those devices and software, it is a known fact, are being monitored by the companies that control them, and they are sharing and selling your information. So there is no privacy. Amazon just announced today they're teaming up with 3 of Britain's spy agencies for God knows what. So, gosh, your doorbells, your Ring doorbells, they are watching you. Alexa is listening to you. This has been documented. So there is no more privacy. If you're one of those few people that was off the grid, good for you. Good luck. Okay? So I am in favor of these, of course. I would love to have 15 LPRs in front of my house and back of my house, in my garage, on my roof, because I don't engage in criminal activity. I don't care if the police and other agencies are watching me, because I don't break the law. So to me, it's helping them fight crime. Fighting crime is a good thing in my book. I wish they had more resources. But please, think about what you're saying when you argue, oh my God, it's an invasion of my privacy. You don't have privacy anymore.
Thank you.
Hi there. Matthew Drews, live on the west side of town, 3626 Central. I'll keep this pretty short and sweet. I'm here, I support LPRs. I also know a lot about them and how they work. I work in IT. If anybody has any questions about how they work, come talk to me. I can explain to you at the most granular level how they work and probably get you convinced that your data is safe and there's state law that governs the usage. I can tell you any number of things that might help you get your arms around this. And as the fellow that was just up here said, the federal government, state government has all kinds of ways of tracking you if they need to, if you're engaged in criminal behavior. This is another tool in the tool belt. I find it ironic that I could put up an LPR camera at my house, point it out at the street and grab tags on vehicles, but we've said, oh no, law enforcement, you can't do that. So in the absence of that, you've got homeowners associations and other private entities that are trying to sort of like fill that void, which is sort of suboptimal. So I'd much rather see law enforcement be able to have access to those tools. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brenda Waybrandt. I live at 2035 Lombardi Avenue. I think everybody in this room can agree that we want to see less crime in our communities. And I think something like an LPR is a solution after a crime has already happened. And what I want to talk about is poverty. I grew up poor. I grew up dirt poor. My mom was on disability. We got a Happy Meal once a month, and that was like a treat. And the way poverty affects your mentality, right? Like Maslow base needs, this has all been studied. If you don't have your base needs met, you cannot make good, solid choices in your life, and crime goes up. So I just want to second what several of our friends in here have said about going to the solution and providing for our communities before we do things like LPRs, right? We have to address the poverty in our society and give people good jobs. Our minimum wage hasn't changed in over 10 years. Meanwhile, the rents are too damn high. I've lived in 10 different places since 2013 with 50 different roommates, just trying to make ends meet. And that's a problem in our community. Our community needs to start addressing the problems for the people who live here instead of making it a place for all of the tourists just to come visit. I worked on Broadway for 8 years. It was disgusting, y'all, with the things that we had to put up with in the restaurant industry. And with that, I want to say, please work to address these other issues in our community, such as poverty and good jobs and affordable housing, if we are going to go along this LR, whatever the acronym is. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Prepti. I live at 214 Hillsborough Place. I work as a criminal defense attorney here in Nashville, representing exclusively indigent clients. I came up here really just to echo a lot of what's been said. The number one concern of why all of us are here is for crime reduction and prevention. And the tools that we're talking about this evening go towards solving those crimes. If we want to address the issue of why these crimes are actually occurring, we cannot look at it within a bubble of just the criminal legal system. We've got to look at it in the context of our education system, of our housing system, of our healthcare system. Very frequently, these crimes are committed by individuals who do not have access to the basic resources to provide them with a livelihood. Oftentimes, these crimes are committed in the context of substance addiction. I know through my experience, the courts have resources to provide grants for people to be able to participate in drug rehabilitation programs. But they should not have to be involved in the criminal legal system to have access to those resources. If we have early interventions before anybody is even involved in the criminal legal system, then that will solve the issue. Before, a woman asked, should we be having a broader conversation? And the answer to that was maybe. I say this evening, the answer to that is a resounding yes. There is only one way to ensure that our communities are safer: providing access to the resources to ensure that they are not in a situation to where they feel as if their only opportunity is to commit crime. I just want to end on one thing. The gentleman before me said, so long as you're not committing crime, what's it matter if the police are surveilling you? I submit this to you. You do not have to be committing a crime to have a negative interaction with the police. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jan Norman, and I'm a resident of Banbury Crossing in Davidson County. I'm also an assistant district attorney at the Davidson County District Attorney's Office. I know a lot of people have mentioned that this is something that's used for after a crime has occurred, but there are actually have been a rash of crime over the last few years in which the perpetrators are armed with firearms, but they're driving around in stolen vehicles, and they are intending to rob people. They are willing to shoot people, and they are willing to kill people. And this is a tool for law enforcement for crime prevention. I'm also here tonight to share with you a message from the mother of Caitlin Kaufman. Ms. Diana Kaufman's daughter, Caitlin Kaufman, was an ICU nurse here in Nashville, Davidson County. She was working during the middle of the pandemic and driving on I-440 to her shift at the hospital when she was shot and killed. There were cameras on that interstate that night, but they were not recording. There were no license plate readers. And Ms. Kaufman sent a message. It says, "My name is Diana Kaufman, and I'm speaking on behalf of my entire family this evening. We are 100% in favor of license plate readers. License plate readers would provide another means for our law enforcement agencies to possibly prevent incidents such as my daughter's from ever happening. The LPR system would help our law enforcement agencies versus hindering their efforts in trying to locate perpetrators. Let's help them fight crime rather than allowing the perpetrators to have the upper hand. This is not an invasion of privacy, but a way of protecting all citizens against wrongdoers. We should be providing all means available to our law enforcement agencies. Let's assist law enforcement agencies so they can do their job more efficiently. It's time we stand alongside the agencies that protect our families. The parameters set forth for the usage of LPRs would prohibit misuse of the system. No family should have to suffer a loss such as mine when there are methods available to help stop these crimes. Thank you for all of your time and consideration in this matter. Let's stand united and help. Warmest regards, Diana Kaufman." Thank you.
Hello, y'all. My name is Steele. I live at 807 Crockett Street. And a lot of people have spoken on why this is not a crime prevention measure, so I won't beat that drum anymore. We all know what crime prevention measures actually are. And we know why we're not having that conversation today. That conversation today isn't being had because these conversations keep being had. Because the solution is always give more money to police, give more money to police, give more money to police. But when we're giving that money to police, it's not going to our communities. We're not setting up our children to succeed, to become adults who make good choices. We're not having those conversations because we're having these conversations, and those conversations aren't going to be had until we say, no, we will not have this conversation. I will not to paraphrase Benjamin Franklin, I will not give up my security, my liberty for security, rather. He who gives up liberty for security deserves neither. That's a fact. Okay, you want to live in a panopticon? That's on you. You can make whatever you want on your own private property. Don't bring that to me. Don't bring that in my neighborhood. I don't want people knowing everything I do. Y'all need to know what goes on in my bedroom? Y'all want to put a friggin' camera in my bedroom? Would that keep you safe? Would that make you more safe? No, it wouldn't. And it makes me uncomfortable. So why are we doing things that make everybody uncomfortable and they don't keep us safe? These things don't keep us safe no matter how much you want to say that they do, okay? I'm tired. All right. I'm tired of waking up every day in a world in which I am being told that I am not enough. I'm not enough, and no help is being given to me. No help is being given to me, and I'm being surveilled every day, beaten down. I'm not being given jobs. I'm not being given transportation help to get jobs. I'm not being given education to get jobs. I'm being expected to be a contributing member of society. Sometimes I do want to run up in somebody's house. I don't, because I make good choices, because my mother raised me that way. Some people didn't have mothers because they was in prison, because they was being surveilled, because they weren't making good choices because they didn't grow up in a way that allowed them to make good choices.
Thank you.
This has got to stop. Have the real conversation.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I live in North Nashville, 37208. I just have a couple points. I am not for license plate readers. Two things I have questions about, which I guess these are open-ended. Safer Nashville, founded by Dan McVicker. He is a local Nashville resident who was also awarded the South Nashville Police Precinct renovation bid. To me, that seems like a conflict of interest. I have a lot of questions about that. If anybody wants to answer any of those, who is for them and who can explain that, that's fine. Another city council member who sits on the board of Safer Nashville was a former MMPD commander. So I think we very clearly see why this nonprofit is wanting to sponsor these license plate readers. There's clearly personal interest, and to me, this is a total conflict of interest. It's not ethical and it's not okay. Second of all, a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I got a parking ticket from Premier Parking in the mail for a lot I've never parked in. I disputed it, and I was told that I had parked there for 0 minutes and was charged, it was a charge of $0, but through their license plate readers, they were able to go back 3 months and saw I drove through that lot and then sent me a bill. So that's the mild version of license plate readers, is that you're getting bills for things you never did. The other option is that you're shot because the police shoot you because they think you are somebody who committed a crime you didn't commit. So, just something to think about. I think if we have another one of these meetings, there needs to be more transparency around the funding. And I think people who are for them need to come here with actual numbers and data as the people against them came with. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who's interested in speaking after this gentleman? Please make sure you come down to the front. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, my name is David Tucker. I live in 37206. I think we have this license plate reader thing backwards. We want to give MMPD more surveillance without any additional accountability. According to their own data, while arrests are down, the disparities still exist. The county voted for police oversight. We've yet to get it. At best, we have a loose cooperation, but you want to give them more surveillance power where there is no trust. You already know that the charter would need to be amended to take the discretion that the chief has out of his hands, which for some reason, there's no political will to do that, but you want to give them more surveillance. The same police department that hired somebody like a Nathan Glass, who, if you look at the interview tape with the detectives tell this guy, if your hiring sergeant has any problem, give them my card. They hired this guy. Subsequently, there was a DA that was fired. They covered up that this man shot this man in the back. But we want to give them more surveillance. The city voted for oversight. We don't have it, which means there continues to be a lack of trust, particularly from communities like mine. But we want to give them more surveillance. At what point will does that mean stop? Okay. At what point does that mean for those of us who really care about Nashville to say that we want policing to change fundamentally, work toward building trust, then maybe they can have more surveillance. But when you do this, you continue with the status quo that we already know the numbers, we already know the data, and I swear I believe that Nashville is much, much better than this. take care of the hard part first.
Thank you.
My name is Melissa Cherry. I live at 3211 Morewood Drive in 37207. This isn't the first time that I was able to speak about license plate readers. I was lucky to be an invited guest to one of the first hearings almost a year ago. But this is the first time that the public has been able to speak on this bill. And we talk about trust. That's not how you do it. There's been 3 different versions of this bill voted down because the community does not trust you. At this point, I don't trust Metro Council because the way Kelly stated, there's 3 different members of the board that's trying to fund this technology outside of the democratic process, and we haven't been able to talk about it. But when we wanted body cameras because we had the impression that they might provide some level of security, which again, they don't, we had to have that conversation before we could do anything. We had to have the conversation about how it was going to be funded. But we're not allowed to talk about it. That is distrustful. You are acting in an untrustworthy way. Metro Council and MMPD and all the members of the FOP that are trying to subsidize their budget that has never been defunded, to be clear. I do not trust license plate readers because I do not trust the process that has been taken here. For over a year, we have shown that it does not have the support it needs to pass, but here we are again. And now we'll be told, well, we had public comment, so now we get to do it. Again, we're doing this backwards. Have the conversation. Be honest about where it's coming from and why. And then we can come back and have a public comment in a trustworthy way. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak tonight? All right, with that, I'd like to thank the Nashville Public Library for hosting us this evening and the staff members that stayed to make sure we could have a place to meet and have everybody heard. I'd also like to thank Councilman Dave Rosenberg and Councilwoman Courtney Johnston for participating and setting this up this evening. General Funk and his assistant district attorneys, as well as our public defender, Martisa Johnson. And thanks to all of you for coming out and spending time with us. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.